Ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome to today's important session, Managing Investigations. I have with me a panel of very distinguished guests here today. I'd like to begin with introducing a man who needs no further introduction after an inspiring keynote he delivered yesterday. Walter V. Robinson was the editor of the Boston Globe's investigation team Spotlight that uncovered the sexual abuse of children in Catholic churches in 2002, for which the team won prestigious Pulitzer Prize in 2003. Robinson has worked at the Globe for 34 years as a reporter and as an editor. He also worked as a professor at Northeastern University in Boston between 2007 and 2014 before finally returning back to his where he feels at home at Globe as editor at large. Our next guest is Umar Cheema. Umar is Pakistan's leading investigative journalist who works with the news. In 2008, Cheema won Daniel Pearl Journalism Fellowship Award and worked as a Pearl Fellow at the New York Times. Cheema exposed the nexus between Pakistan's intelligence agencies and extremist groups in his 2010 report, after which he was abducted and tortured. For his courage and dedication towards journalism, Cheema was awarded International Press Freedom Award by CPJ, Committee for Protecting Journalists, in 2011. Cheema was also part of the recent IJAsia transnational project, Panama Papers, about which we've heard 2 days back. And our third, but not the least, guest is Philipus Parera, an investigative editor with Jakarta-based Tempo magazine. Philipus has been involved in various investigative projects exposing corruption, human trafficking, and tax frauds for Tempo, and was part of ICIJ's transnational investigative project, Panama Papers. I welcome you all, and I'd like to begin with welcoming Philipus to make his presentation.
Okay. Thank you. Let's start. First, I want to tell short story about Tempo. We are a media group in Indonesia. We have a magazine, a daily newspaper, online news website, and online television channel. Our magazine is the older and the most popular political magazine in Indonesia right now. In 1994, because of a report on government purchasement of a used battleship from Germany, our magazine was banned by the authority at the time, Suharto regime. We grounded for 4 years, but managed to republish in 1998 after the regime changed. And at the same time, we introduced new content of our magazine, which is investigative news. Actually, the report on the purchasement of battleship was an investigative reporting, but at the time we didn't categorize it as investigative news. Sorry. This is Tempo, the cover when we publish it. So I must say, in Indonesia, publication ban was the main threat for journalists and media to do investigative reporting. Yes, not only Tempo, many Indonesian media also experienced ban. Some of them managed to republish like us, but many of them also didn't. And of course, this is not the only reason why not many journalists in Indonesia make investigative reporting. Some of our journalists, they just do not want to do that because they think it is expensive, and maybe they don't have enough resources to do that. Also, there are also some journalists and media. They just don't want to because they have a very close relationship with the people in power in Indonesia. As you may know, now in Indonesia we have 3 biggest television in Indonesia now owned by 2 owned by political leaders there, also businessmen, and 1 owned by former political party leaders. And so because of that background, our investigative procedure in Tempo really began with finding initial data, because we don't have easy access to public documents. We always start with try to find documents that contain information about the case we are going to investigation, also including sometimes person or organization who might involve in that case, and other important information that assure that the case is there and can be investigated. So we have like 6 steps: finding initial data, and then making investigation plan, and I cannot say looking for data and documents, and validating, verifying, and then confirmation, and produce the news content. Yes. As I said before, because in Indonesia we don't issue to get important document. Yes. Because it is not easy for us to get important document to be investigated. Usually, most of our investigations start whenever there are leaks to be followed. So these leaks, which is we called initial data or data awal in Bahasa Indonesia, the leaks can come from a lot of sources, usually from government officials, maybe attorneys, lawyers, workers who don't happy with their companies, anti-corruption activists, and many others. And because of these things, in Tempo we have a tradition to build relationship with people in power, or with those who we think have important information or data. So, for example, it's very easy to our new reporters. We always ask them to, if you get know with people, new people, or government official, or those in power who have access to important information, then just follow it up with testing them at least 2 times a week, so they can still remembering you. Hello, how are you today? Do you have any important information to share with me today? I am Philip from Tempo. Just like that. Do this for a full 1 year. Then once this person have any important information to leak, then your name will be on the top of their mind. So that's the thing we do in Tempo. Some people also, maybe I must also say that since 1998, we continuously producing investigative reporting until now. Some people may ask us why we can be so consistent in that, and I may say it is because our news desk is very independent. Because Tempo is a public companies now, but most of the shares are controlled by employees, by us, through 2 non-profit organization. So we are very independent. We are who that decided which news can be published or not our publisher. So we don't have the publisher. We are the publisher. That's the reason we can be so independent. The other thing, I must say, and also like Spotlight, we only have 4 people in our team, including 1 managing editor. So we don't do daily news or weekly news. So we have like full days of work in investigative project. Because of that, our team is expected to deliver like one story a month. This expected deadline sometimes can be fulfilled, but many times we failed. So in the average, we only can deliver like one investigative story in 2 or 3 months. Yes. So that I think I can firstly deliver, and if there are any questions, we can discuss it.
Thank you, Philipus. I'd like to now request Umar Cheema to make his presentation.
Good morning, everybody. My presentation will be a little longer, but I will try my level best to not let you feel bored. So it's about the planning investigations. I'm sharing my personal experience that how I have been doing, and there may be some lesson for you, and I will further explain it through a case study about the taxes that I did. So they say, and depends on the beginning. So, first in every investigation report is that the idea that first you think about it. Although we used to say that the story is always in the reporter's mind, but if the idea is not practicable, if it remains just an idea and you want to do a story, it can become a table story without any substance. So it's the first step, but we have to move forward, and that is the source of idea, that how we get the ideas. It's not that there is not any revelations. You just read the stuff, you observe the stuff, you discuss issues with different people, and you get the idea. Sometimes you get the leads. People will tell you in the government sector or in the from the common folks what is happening, and there you get the idea and move forward. And then comes the point that how to do it, whether it's doable or not, what kind of information is required, what kind of resources are required, and so you think about it, and then why to do it. Is there any public interest involved? Whether my newspaper will carry it, what kind of impact it can generate. So, this is how we start, and if you don't have the answer to these questions, you often fail to convince your management that why I'm doing this story and why it is important. So, as we were discussing the issue of that how doable it is, so it depends that you need to have information, whether there are sources available, maybe an issue of public importance. The basic source of information are common people. Basic source of information, your official sources, and then the official documents, for example, court documents, election papers, tax documents, and other documents. Digital sources. There is many information available in the open data. You go to any department's website, you can get different kind of information. It may not be the complete information that you are looking for, but it can help you build a better story. And then the crowdsourcing. Sometimes you get idea, for example, you are doing a story and you have done it, maybe a kind of initial version, and it is published on the Facebook, it is published in your newspaper. It may not be at such an advanced level that you are planning. So there are different folks discussing, commenting it, and in the process, sometimes you become able to get access to new sources. Pitching the story idea, when you analyze that how doable it is and why I'm doing, then you write a summary for your management that this is the story. You explain it through an outline, and why the newspaper should publish it, that why it is important for their readership. Obviously, other than the readership, they think that our newspaper will be discussed, and that will bring us more revenue or other things. What kind of sources available? You can, after all, you have to convince your management. You may be needing some financial resources. So convincing them is important that I have enough resources to help me build the story. So arranging budget. So that is the next point and very crucial. By the way, in Asian countries, we are not in the habit of discussing such things, and nor we expecting so much budget from our management. We have to do on our own. If your management is not convinced, if they are not willing to do it, just speak to media development organizations. There are organizations, for example, if somebody is working on the corruption, they may help you, and my experience suggests that you don't need so much resources, so much financial resources to do a story. So, for example, if you need some technical support or things like that, or some basic support, you can also go to GIJN resources. They can help you, let you know that small funded grants on different issues that is also available. But I don't think that you have to go such a way, you have to go too long. You can manage the resources while living in Nepal or Pakistan or other places. So what I have mentioned earlier, what I have explained now, I'm telling you through through a case study. I did story about the taxes and why it is important. As I mentioned, that why should it matter for the public? So in context of Pakistan and no doubt in the context of overall South Asia and many other countries, we had a secure tax system. There are inequalities. The poor subsidize the rich through indirect taxes. The rich people, they don't pay the taxes, and there is not such proper enforcement that you can get taxes from them. And I did the story about the member of parliament. And why member of parliament? Because they impose the taxes. And if they impose the taxes and they don't pay their own, they don't have any right to impose the taxes on others. So everybody knew that they don't know. They don't pay the taxes. But they didn't have the exact information that who is paying what and who is not. So I wanted to do, and I wanted to explain it in order to create resonance with the public, that keep asking them in order to start a new debate about the tax issues. I did a couple of series. Am I getting late?
No, you're fine.
Okay. So I did a couple of series on that member of parliament. So this was the tax to GDP ratio in Pakistan. It is still around at 10% and very small. Taxpayers around 2% people, they pay that. They have the national tax number. Majority of them, they are out of the tax net. Tax return filers, they are around 0.8 million. Now the government is claiming that they have reached to the number of 1 million. Share of direct taxes is 25%. So this is a kind of problem statement that why I decided to write about this issue, and I did. So this was my first report. And before reaching to this report, I got some documents about the nominations. I got nominations paper where there was tax information available. And other than doing the story, I put it on the my Facebook page. And there I got connected with other sources, as I was telling you about the crowdsourcing. So I got connected with the sources who had access to direct tax record. So what were the findings of this report? That 67% lawmakers, including the president, they had not filed the tax returns. And failing to file the tax return means that you are the tax defaulter. And if the law is applied, all of them could have been sent home. They could have been disqualified on this ground. It was not done though anyway, but we let the public know that there were only 33% who did their filing. That doesn't mean filing doesn't mean that they paid they made honest payment, but anyway they did the filing. So Prime Minister by that time he registered himself for national tax number 2 years after becoming the Prime Minister. Before that, he never had the national tax number, and he had served at very important position even before. And 34 cabinet members, they were among the tax defaulters. President was among the tax defaulters. So this story made international headlines. It was published in New York Times. It was published by Reuters, AFP, Guardian, National Public Radio. And this was the research methodology. I wrote to all members of the parliament first, asking them questions that do you have a national tax number? When did you get the tax number? And when did you last pay the taxes? And then I obtained the nomination paper through RTI from election office. NTN was verified from the website, as I was mentioning, the digital resources. Tax record received through the official sources that I got through the crowdsourcing, and technical support, just entering the data extra that I received from an NGO. And what was the impact? That the tax record sparked debate. They were questioned about, tax authorities were questioned about the stolen data. Tax ombudsman demanded fresh oath of member of parliament, that we are the next taxpayer, they have to give the oath. A British member of, the issue was also taken up by the British Parliament. They said that we pay taxes in UK, and do you pay in Pakistan? UK, it was made conditional with tax reforms. Ruling party directed member of parliament to file tax returns. Then another story was done.
Umar, you might want to wrap it up quickly.
Can you give me 2 minutes, please? So this was, now I'm trying to wrap up. So I did another story a year later, and these were the findings that this time around 53% were the non-filers. Every 11th member of parliament was without national tax number. And this was the impact. After the second report, a deadline for member of parliament was set to register for national tax number. Tax directory of all member of parliament was published. Tax directory of citizen was published. And Pakistan became the 4th country in the world where now annual tax directory is published. Before that, it is done in Sweden, Norway, and Finland. So, this is the Revenue Department website, and you can see, you can even, while sitting here, you can access the tax record. It's open now, tax record. You can access by going to the website, and you see here the tax directory of the citizens and the member of parliament separate for 2003, 2004, and 2005. And so now it has become annual ritual when the tax directory is released. Such kind of report appears that Nawaz Imran paid less tax in 2005 than previous year. So people now keep track of them. It has become a debate now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Umar, for that fascinating presentation. I think that's something we in Nepal would also aspire to do, make our parliamentarians reveal their tax payments regularly. Next, I would like to ask Mr. Walter Robinson to make his presentation.
Thank you. Good morning. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation. I'm a 19th century journalist, and
but your story's there.
Oh, the story's there. Thank you. I didn't put it there. You did, but thank you. Every time I try to do something that involves the computer in a presentation, something invariably goes wrong. So I'll stick to the spoken word here. First of all, I'm delighted to be as part of this panel, although I have to say I sometimes think that the words journalism and management said together can be seen as an oxymoron. In our newsrooms, we don't normally manage things so well. We manage chaos, I think. Before I start, I'd like to state the obvious. The gold standard for managing an investigative project was really set by the Panama Papers project. And I remain, as I'm sure some of you are, dumbfounded how they were able to herd so many cats. Now, I know I don't mean to refer to you as a cat, but so many reporters in so many countries, I mean, that's just extraordinary work. The Spotlight team at the Globe, which I led for 7 years, has been in existence since 1970. It is the oldest continuous investigative team at any newspaper in the United States. It wasn't always that way. Newsday started earlier, but they gave up on it, and we're still going. So over time, certainly from my predecessors, there's certain practices which were used in planning and managing the investigative project, most of which, when I took over, I continued. Some of which I came up with on my own. But let me. I don't want to talk about the church project so much because we really kind of, because of circumstance, deviated from the norm there. And as I think you know, that idea came from the new editor. And typically, and I think correctly, ideas for investigative projects should bubble up from reporters. And it's another reminder of what Joseph Pulitzer once said: every reporter a hope, every editor a disappointment. But Marty Barron did come up with a pretty good idea, but that's not normally the way we do it. And the reporters on an investigative team, and we rotate reporters every 2 to 4 years, so many reporters in the organization get this experience. Reporters come up with the ideas. We very often, in the team, we have 15 or 20 possible project ideas sitting on the shelf that we could do. But the first and most important decision that you make is who's going to be on the team. And if you don't make this decision correctly, it can throw a wrench into everything else that you try to do with the investigative project. You have to pick people with complementary skills. That's absolutely critical. I was able to put together the team that I had, and that was important to me. But more important to me was that they had to be complementary and supportive personalities. Now, the one thing that I think is pretty common about good reporters, and good reporters work on investigative teams, is good reporters have good-sized egos. And when you're working on a team, you really have to be able to subordinate your ego and work together. Otherwise, what's the point of putting a team together if the people on it are not willing to work together to help one another, and particularly to share information? So the benefits of teamwork can quickly be lost if you have the wrong people. Another point on the team: someone has to be in charge. There are other models in which there are, usually within a newsroom, 2 or 3 reporters who are investigative reporters, but no one's in charge. And they work together, but that creates problems. So someone must be in charge. In the case of our team, it had been typical of I had senior editing positions. I was the assistant managing editor for investigations, but I was also the player coach. I did as much reporting as any of the other 3 reporters on the team. One other decision that is sometimes tough to call is, depending upon the project you do, whether you bring in a beat reporter for that project. Sometimes we do it, sometimes we don't. I remember one project we worked on that involved possible political corruption. We thought about bringing in a State House reporter, and then in the end we decided that wasn't a good idea because he was so recognizable in the state office buildings, and if he was going looking for documents, red flags would be waved. We like to operate out of public view. And when we did our church series, the Globe had at the time what I really consider to be the best religion writer in the country, Michael Paulson. And Michael wanted in on the investigation, and we made a decision not to let him be part of the investigation, but because we felt it was so important to have our religion writer apart from the team to write about all the fallout within the church once the story broke. And I think Michael, who did an extraordinary job in 2002 and shared in our Pulitzer Prize, I think that was the right decision. When I talk about teamwork, to me, having a complementary four-person team working together is like having a fifth brain in the room. Every time you sit down, it brings an extra dimension to discussions. I want to talk about picking the investigative story. And most all of the criteria that I'm going to mention, I think, have to be met. And if possible, all of them should be met. First of all, the story must lead to the exposure of a grievous wrong. It must have wide impact and interest. It should be a story that has national implications. For instance, if it is something you've uncovered in your own backyard, in your own circulation area, you should assume that it's going on in other states, so that gives you the opportunity to broaden the story and go national. I hate to say this, publication of it should lead to major change. And I should add, make sure nobody else has done the story. I mean, and I've been involved in situations where reporters get pretty far down the road on a story, and then you find out the New York Times did it 2 years ago. Kind of takes the air out of the sails. So once you've met those criteria, you must then do what I call prospecting. You must be confident that you can prove the story. You do not launch 4 reporters on a 10 or 12-month investigation unless you know that you're going to be able to bring the story in. You have to have documents. You have to have confidence that people will be able to speak out. There should be powerful personal stories to drive the narrative. If somebody has been wronged, the people who have been wronged have to speak. It cannot be a he said story. It has good and it has bad. You have to prove it. You give the other side ample opportunity to respond, but it has to be clear to the reader that you have uncovered wrongdoing, and without question. Your findings cannot be challenged. The story that you set out to do has to be obviously approved up the line. There's a lot of I've found in my years as a news editor and as a reporter that editors are generally pretty good at managing down. They're not very good at managing up. When you do an investigative project, and I'll give you an example at the Globe, our deputy managing editor for special projects, Ben Bradley Jr., was at heart a reporter. And when he and I decided on a project, I kept him in the loop almost daily. He knew what we were doing. He bought into it. He supported it. He understood the story. so that when the story was done, when the reporting was done and the writing commenced, he knew exactly what was going to land on his desk, or I should say in his queue. If you don't have that kind of a relationship with the supervising editor, trouble is almost inevitable. If you have an editor who is distracted, who doesn't pay attention, who doesn't have the time to listen to you, when you deliver the product to him, he's going to look at it, and it's going to be so foreign to him that it's likely that he's going to say, that's not what I wanted. That's not how this should be done. I think we ought to tear this apart and start over. And believe me, I've seen instances where that happened, and it can be devastating to the team that did the work. I want to use the word, which I think is Italian, omerta. We operate in secret. We don't share with our colleagues. We operate at the Globe, we operate on a different floor of the newsroom. We don't share with our colleagues because, as we all know, journalists are the most prolific gossips in the world. And once a newsroom finds out what Spotlight is doing, it gets out of the building in a hurry. You don't want that, for all sorts of reasons. Managing the project. You have to deploy your complementary skill sets of your reporters based upon their abilities and what they're good at. You should try to meet daily. You certainly need to require each reporter to write a file every day that's kept in a common queue so everybody knows what everybody else is doing. If you can't meet daily, you should meet every other day or twice a week so that you can sit down and bring that fifth brain into the room and bounce ideas off each other. And those sessions are so critical to doing really good investigative work. Reporters should, even if you're on a 6 or 8 or 10-month project, you should write as you go. If you're doing what looks to be one installment of a 4-part series, you should start to write early. One reason to do that is it helps guide your reporting. If the important things that you've found out in the last month, for instance, are reduced to 4 or 5 paragraphs that will eventually be part of the story, it helps keep framed in your mind the direction you need to go to finish your reporting. And I should add, I once made a terrible error myself when I was a young reporter. I didn't do that, and I had so much material that I left out of what turned out to be an investigative story that destroyed a politician. I left out one of the most important findings about a lie he had told under oath about his background. I just forgot about it because it was buried in my notes. If I had been writing as I was going, it never would have happened. Don't tell anybody I told you that. You have to, and particularly this is more true, much more true nowadays, you have to bring in all the other players at the paper early on. It used to be back in the day that the only person you brought in was the photo editor. That's it. I'm going back to the 90s. But now you have a database editor and a database reporter. They have to be involved from the get-go. You have the photo editor. You have the graphics people. You have the videographer. You have the online editor and how we're going to present that online. You have the social media people who are going to help get the story out. So you have to have frequent meetings, and it can get unwieldy. I mean, there are meetings at the Globe now on any investigative project where there are literally 12 editors in the room planning various stages. So this is a complicated process. You need to start that early. If you leave it for too late, it can derail the whole project and delay it for months and months. Yeah, I'm about to lock up. to deal with ego problems, it took me a while to realize this, we write now, we do a joint byline. So this story was reported and written by the Globe Spotlight team, and then we list all the names. The person who actually wrote the story, his name goes, or her name goes first. And that way we avoid ego problems. You have to give the targets of your investigation ample time to respond. Back in the old days at the Globe, they'd call people the night before publication. That was a bad thing. On one project that we did, we brought in the Chief Justice of the state court system 3 months before we published, and we had extensive discussions with her. And because of that, when we published the series, in the very top of the first installment, the Chief Justice acknowledged that the system had failed, and she said, "We're going to fix it." That's pretty good when you get a reaction with the first story. You need to fact-check everything. We go through these painful sessions where we sit around. I've written an installment, and we go through it line by line, and everybody in the room is obligated to challenge me on every fact and where I got it. And that can be a lifesaver. A big decision is whether to publish something as a 4-part series, typically starting on Sunday and ending on Wednesday. By Tuesday, most of the readers have fallen asleep. The alternative, which I find to be better, is to let a really good investigative series ooze out. You publish the first installment, and all of a sudden, the phone lines light up, people telling you stuff. So you end up, we did one series that we did this way. We thought it was a 3-part series. It ended up as an 8-part series, simply because everybody was cued into the Globe was doing this, and they were feeding us information. You have to anticipate and plan for follow-ups and reaction stories. And once you've done all that, then give the team about 2 weeks off with pay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Walter. There you have it, the tip that we had all been looking for. Management and journalism don't go together, but when it comes to working with journalists with contending egos, you have to wear a management hat as well if you are an editor. Thank you for that presentation. And before I open for floor question, I just have a very quick question for Philipus. Philipus, you were part of this Panama Papers investigation. And we come to know that there were at least 100 journalists from 76 countries. But there were also a number of Indonesian journalists who exposed around 899 Indonesians who had their, who had been listed in the report. How did you manage to keep such a, large scale of, expose from, getting out? And because you were working with a number of journalists, well, was it a challenge to keep, that investigation, undercover? Yes.
Yes, we keep that secret only in the small teams. We have like 6 persons in our office involved in this project. So we only do that, and only our editor know whatever we got and what stories we are following. There are hundreds of people in Indonesia, names on the papers, but we only do the story on public officers. Like we have a big story on our minister, one of our ministers. He has a company in Seychelles, offshore company, and this company, he is the director of the company, and this company have owned by 2 Indonesian companies. So what we do in Indonesia, back in Indonesia, is we try to trace these 2 companies. It turned out that these 2 companies owned direct by his son and one of his former employee. And then one of these 2 Indonesian companies involved in an electricity project in Indonesia, around $50 million. in 2007, must be finished in 2012, but it's still until now, doesn't finish. Maybe I have like a picture of that project. Sorry.
Can I have the slider?
Oh, no, with a habit. Sorry. Sorry, I forgot to put it. That's. But yes, he threatened to sue us now, but he's still minister now and very powerful. Yeah.
And finally, just a quick word. How did you? How are you getting support from the public? Because you said after the Panama Leak paper came out, you had given in one of your interview, you had said that we need more collaboration from the public because this is just the beginning of the investigation. How is that going?
Yeah. As I said, because it is difficult in Indonesia to get documents from government agencies, so most of our investigations start when we have leaks from public, from whistleblower. So when Panama Papers information documents published by IJAsia in the website, we call public to help us looking at the names, and if they have information about particular names in that list, please call us or just telling us. But until now, unfortunately, there are no important information, new information from public.
Can we have some questions from the public? Do I see that?
Good morning. Thank you so much for the wonderful presentations. I have two questions for Robinson. The first one is, like you mentioned, good journalists have ego, but you are so humble. What's the secret behind it? How could you be so humble? Could you share the secret? The second thing you said is like editors have to give 2 weeks off, week off with payment. Do you think that's possible in today's journalism?
I think I'm subordinating a huge ego to answer your first question. On giving reporters time off, I think the Globe, we demand so much of our reporters, and we often work 6-day weeks, 7-day weeks. Certainly on the church series we did. People have to recharge their batteries, and after such an investigation, time off is warranted. I think of our sports reporters, the reporters who cover the Boston Red Sox from April through October, usually kind of go away for 3 months afterwards with pay. But they work, morning. I mean, they literally work from morning through midnight every day. So you have to treat your employees well if you can get away with it.
Any other question? Yes, Anuita. Excuse me. Can Anuita finish first?
Thank you. I'm Santi from Indonesia. I want to ask to Mr. Robinson about, you said before that the investigative reporting has to be big impact and also exclusive. I want to ask about the collaborative initiative. Is it possible now if we can do the investigative reporting together, and because this is collaborative, not only competitive? This is the first question. And the other question about independency. How to be still independent if the finance to do that is not independent? As we know that a lot of the media owned by the big tycoon, and so how can we still independent to make investigative reporting? Is it possible in Indonesia, also in Pakistan, and also in America to make investigative reporting from the crowdfunding? Yes.
Okay, I missed. Okay, that's a good question. How can the media be independent when the finances are not? I have not encountered a problem in that area. I mean, the Globe was independent for years. It was owned by the same family. They sold it to the New York Times Company, which never interfered with what we did. And our newspaper is now owned by the man who owns the Boston Red Sox, and he wrote an op-ed piece when he bought the newspaper saying he would never interfere in the operations of the news side. And in the 4 years since he bought the paper, he has never done that. He has lived up to that. So we've been lucky. It's more difficult sometimes at smaller papers who have, perhaps 3 or 4 major advertisers only. I think they tend to be a little more cautious. But at bigger newspapers, it's less of a problem. Certainly at the Globe, I acknowledge it's probably a problem at some newspapers. It used to be said in the U.S. that there was a perfect balance in newspapers, that the publishers were all Republicans and the reporters were all Democrats, and so therefore we had a fair and balanced report.
I think what you said about the relationship between the publisher and the editor at your newsroom seems like an exceptional case to us, who come from South Asia. Maybe Umar can make a quick comment on that. How does the corporate interest of the newsroom impinge upon journalists or editors' freedom to do investigative reporting?
It is becoming a very serious issue with the passage of time. Earlier, for example, in Pakistan, we used to think that the major threat to press freedom is coming from the militancy and from the military side. But now we have started realizing that corporate side, it is posing a big challenge to the media freedom. We can write about militancy, we can write about military, but we cannot think writing about the telecom companies. We cannot write about the big corporations because they are the advertisers. And the publisher has his own justification. He says that, what if I ask you that I have lost an advertisement and should I make a cut in your salary? Would you like to do it? So they have their own justification.
Anoita had a question. Yeah, just before Anoita has a question. I'm sorry, I think Anoita has a question.
Sorry, my first question about the collaborative initiative.
Yeah, I'm. It's been. I left the Spotlight team in 2006. I've been involved in some collaborative efforts when I was running an investigative, foundation-supported investigative project at Northeastern University that worked out very well. And I'm a big fan of the concept. I haven't been involved in too much of it. I still believe that at times there is more benefit in taking a sort of a competitive stance on some stories.
We know that investigative journalism is extremely resource intensive, both in terms of money and people. And I'm sure investigating journalists fail as often as they succeed. I'm wondering how, and this is on the panel, how do you convince your employers to stay the course and give you enough time, give the investigative team enough years to complete things? One thing Mr. Robinson mentioned was keeping your boss informed on a day-to-day basis, but I'm wondering whether there are other tips which you could share with us.
Well, the first thing I said, and I think I raised this, is that you're spending the boss's money. So the worst thing that can happen is you embark on an investigative project and 4 or 5 months later you go into the boss with your tail between your legs and you say, we can't get the story. I mean, that's devastating for an investigative team. So, it makes it so imperative that before you launch, you're pretty damn certain you're going to be able to bring the story home.
Yes, gentleman in the middle.
Another question for Walter Robinson. Just as a follow-up to the earlier question, does investigative journalism, in your experience, help the paper make money? Has there been ever any correlation that you found? And a second question would be, on an average, how many stories would Spotlight do in a year?
Okay, those are good questions. People are always accusing us. I'm sure this happens to all of us. Oh, you're only doing this story because you're trying to sell papers. The fact of the matter is, if the Red Sox are in the World Series, they sell an extra 40,000 papers a day. If the Spotlight team has a series, they might sell a few more papers, but really not that much. I think, but where you play there is anytime you do a readership survey at a major American newspaper, you ask people what they value most from the newspaper. It's investigative reporting. It's reporting that holds powerful institutions accountable. So there's no doubt that the way to energize your readership base and keep it is to do that kind of work.
I think one last.
Well, I can tell you that since 1970, that's 46 years, the Globe has published somewhere between 95 and 100 Spotlight series. So that's about 2 a year.
I think we have time just for one last question from the left.
Walter, again, this is for you. You mentioned make sure nobody else has done the story. What happens when you have facts out there in the newspaper, or rather in most of the newspapers, but you still want to tell the story a different way? How do you convince your editor? And the second point you mentioned is that in a collaborative byline effort, the first byline is given to the writer. Now, back from where I come from, in my office, there are many instances when the best investigator is not the best writer. So how do you handle that?
You have a really good editor who knows how to rewrite without inserting his or her byline into the story. And I didn't catch the first part of your question.
The first question is, you said make sure nobody else has done the story. Now, sometimes what happens is you have facts which are out there, but people are repeating it, but the story still needs to be told. And when you go to the editor and say that there is a story in this, and he says, but this is already known, or everybody are throwing these numbers, so how do you convince him that the story still needs to be told? I wish I could tell you the example out here, but I cannot.
Yeah. I mean, there are many stories that pass under our eyes that we turn over to reporters in the newsroom to do. And where the editor would say, well, that's fine. That's not a Spotlight series, but it's something we should do, and somebody else gets assigned it. Does that answer your question?
Well, thank you for all the question. I think we are nearing the end of the session. But before we end, I think we have at least 3 good takeaways from this session in the form of, if you are managing an investigation, as we do at Center for Investigative Journalism as well. So these are quite handy tips. So we are talking about balancing the egos of competing journalists to get the best out of them, and then trying to balance publishers' interests, make sure that the newsroom maintains its independence. Although it's the publisher where the money comes from. So yes, you give boss worth his money with the good story, but make sure that the publisher interest does not impinge upon the reporters, because at the end of the day, between the reporters and the publisher, it's the editor who has to defend newsroom's freedom. With that, I thank all our panelists. We still have time for some questions, I guess.
Until 10:15.
Okay, great. Thanks. Let's take some more questions.
My question is for Umar and my Indonesian colleague. You see, investigative journalism in US and investigative journalism in countries like Pakistan, Afghanistan, Indonesia, Nepal, Sri Lanka, it's totally different. Like as far as the quality, as far as the, the tips which you have given here. So I want to ask Umar and my Indonesian colleague that it's not a walk in the park to be an investigative reporter in Pakistan or India or Nepal or Indonesia. Or for instance, if we give an earlier hint 3 months ago, then you will jeopardize not only the life of the reporter as well as the whole story. So sitting in US, what concession Robinson will give us, and how would manage Umar and Philip being an investigative reporter in their respective countries where a lot of people, a lot of journalists have been killed in line of duty? Thank you.
I think what Robinson has told us, there are many things to learn from it, but we should not wait for everything to have before we starting investigation in Pakistan. That the facilities available in American newsroom, if we have those facilities, then we do the work. We don't work in that environment. We should try to replicate something that is doable in our newsroom. But the other thing is that what Robinson has explained, actually, what I understand, he suggested to do work in a systematic manner. That we have 4 staffers or 2 staffers, depending on the scope of the project and depending on the resources. We are lagging behind in terms of collaborative culture. Here only one staffer work at one time. Sometime the publishers and even the editors, they are not interested in investigative stuff. You have to sell it, and you feel very obliged if the story is published.
Maybe I want to add something. In Indonesia, I mean, especially because now the journalists or media who do investigative journalism, they are treated mostly by people who don't like what they write, legally or physically. They attack the journalists. So we have a procedure to make sure that whatever we do, it will be safe, not only for the journalists, but also for the media after publishment. For example, if we think it is important before we publish our story, we will talk to the lawyers, our lawyers or independent lawyers, to ask them to review the stories from the legal point of view before we publish it. So maybe that's what I cannot add.
Umar, just quickly one question. In South Asia, we often see journalists have problems with going after a story by filing RTI and trying to get information, because there is so much of intimidation and threat around the investigative reporting that journalists often find creative ways of sourcing information or documents from the offices, public offices. Do you think that is going to be a norm in the coming days in Pakistan as well, or do you think we have to make RTI movement more stronger?
Yeah, that culture needs to be promoted, but I'm afraid that many journalists, they won't practice it, and it's a global phenomena. I don't think that journalists, even in America, they are the aggressive user of the RTI law, Freedom of Information Law. Robinson may be in a better position to explain it. As far our area is concerned, or anywhere, I would often say that RTI is a tool that can also promote safe journalism. That if you have the documents, there is no speculation around. You are publishing the documents, or you are quoting the documents. You can at least say that this is official version, or this is official document. It's not my personal interpretation, and there is no vested interest involved with it. So it helps to a large extent, and many of the safety related issues, rather the safety risk that the journalists face in our region, I think one reason for that is the lack of professionalism. Sometimes they don't do proper verification, and they do reporting as if they are in direct confrontation with the subject of the report. So that should be avoided. More professional they become, and more documented their information is, safer they will be feeling.
One more question. I think I saw a hand there.
I'm from Taiwan. Question to Phillips and Robinson. I'm quite curious because usually a team member will provide several ideas, but sometimes the idea cannot work out. So I want to know what's your principle to design which project you want to going on and which project you want to do early fail.
Yeah, the question was, reporters bring different ideas to the table. How do we decide which one? Sometimes we argue about it a lot, but we have the set of standards, some of which I outlined. Which of the possible stories we could do would have the greatest impact? Which is the most important? Which story has the most number of victims who need us to speak out for them? Which story would have the biggest impact? And most importantly, which of these stories can we actually get? I mean, so in the end, it's usually a pretty easy decision because something will leap out of the pile that meets all of those criteria better than anything else.
Yeah. In Tempo, we always need to bring the story we want to investigate into newsroom meeting. So the newsroom that will be decided whether this proposal must be investigated or not. And the second thing is investigation team must be very sure that this particular story can be investigated. So first beforehand that there are documents that you can get, there are people or sources, whistleblower, you can ask for this particular question. So as I said before, we have like a tradition to find initial data or data awal in Bahasa Indonesia, it including information about the case we are going to investigate, also documents, and sometimes including people or organization might involve in the case we are investigating.
Okay, one last question. I think there.
Thank you. Hello, thank you. I'm Abhishek from India Spend. My first question is to Walter. Compared to, say, 20 years ago, when the spotlight, when this story broke out, and today, there's a lot of difference between how news are consumed. In those times, print was the only medium, and as of today, and in the coming decade, the online content is going to be a major part, and not the print. So this is in part changing how people consume news. How are they affected by it? So what do you think? What is going to change? How investigative stories will their impact change? How will their impact change? One thing. And second question is also for Philip, is that I heard that in Indonesia, I spoke to Adik yesterday, in Indonesia, most of the news is consumed in the Indonesian language. And also, I think in Pakistan, I don't know about it, but it is possible that it is consumed in the Urdu language. I don't know. I would like Umar to throw light upon it. But in India, we have many languages, almost 22 official languages. But
please keep it short.
Yeah, so the question is that does the language or the national language or the mother tongue affect how the news is consumed?
Do you want to go first?
In case of Pakistan, still majority of the people they read in Urdu. So and Urdu newspaper they have the largest readership. The English newspaper, they are for the policy makers. That is what we think. While writing in English, we think that only policy makers are in our mind, or the urban elite. But for example, in my case, I am fortunate that my stories are simultaneously published in English and Urdu. So I have readership in both categories.
In response to your first question, increasingly reporters at the Globe and other newspapers don't use the word newspaper when they describe who they work for. They work for the Boston Globe, and they think of themselves more as online reporters because we're headed that way, and it's difficult to imagine, but I firmly believe that within 5 or more years we won't be publishing our newspapers on paper anymore. I mean, frankly, it's like trying to sell someone a newspaper. The information's 12 hours old when they get it. It's like trying to sell a buggy whip in 1915. But in terms of investigative reporting, the large resources still reside in newspaper newsrooms. And it is newspapers that still have the greatest ability to do investigative reporting, whether online or in print. And I don't see that changing. I mean, there are online investigative outfits, and they play a role, but I still think newspapers will, or what they become, will still do most of that.
Thank you, Robby. Before we end, do you have a quick comment?
Oh, yeah. Well, because in bahasa we have bahasa Indonesia. It's our language. It's used by all Indonesian people. So we do the story on Indonesia. But we also have English edition for our magazine, but for foreigners. But not much. Maybe every week it's about like 10,000 exemplar of English edition of our magazine.
I thank my speakers for such a fascinating presentation, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your good questions and your for listening to the session. Thank you so much.